Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's the 28th of November 2024, 3:04 p.m. The temperature today in Brisbane is, at this current moment in time, although it feels way hotter, is 29 degrees Celsius, but it's very, very humid outside, very hot. My beautiful friend Lynn came to see me. She just left, and I had my cleaning lady Rati here this morning. So we've had two visitors today, Charlie. Two. Charlie was very happy to see Rati, and Lynn sang them lots of lovely Charlie songs, didn't you? The Charlie songs with the people. Lots of lovely Charlie songs. Very happy birdie today. She was grumpy yesterday. So, swings and roundabouts at Sacred Space, even for the birdies. So I've decided to continue on with our telling of 1001 Arabian Nights. And today's story is called The Barber's Tale of Himself. Quoth Scheherazade the following night, there is a tale the barber tells of himself and his 6 brothers. Hello. I was living in Baghdad during the times of Al-Mustansir Billah, son of Al-Mustazi Billah, the then Caliph, a prince who loved the poor and needy and companied with the learned and pious. One day it happened to him that he was wroth with 10 persons, highwaymen, who robbed on the Caliph's highway, and he ordered the prefect of Baghdad to bring them into the presence on the anniversary of the great festival. So the prefect sallied out and, making them his prisoners, what you doing, Charlie? Embarked with them in a boat. I caught sight of them as they were embarking, and I said to myself, these are surely assembled for a marriage feast. Methinks they are spending their day in that boat, eating and drinking, and none shall be companion of their cups but I myself. So I rose, O fair assembly, and of the excess of my courtesy and the gravity of my understanding, I embarked with them and entered into conversation with them. They rowed across to the opposite bank, where they landed, and there came up the watch and guardians of the peace with chains, which they put round the robbers' necks. They chained me amongst the rest of them, and, O people, is it not a proof of my courtesy and spareness of speech that I held my peace and did not please to speak? Then they took us away in bilboes, and next morning, I thought that was the name of Bilbo Baggins in the Shire. Didn't know it was an actual thing. I'm guessing it's some kind of boat. I don't know. Let's Google Bilbo. All this time, and I'm an avid Lord of the Rings fan, I didn't know that Bilbo was an actual thing of some kind. Just comes up with Bilbo Baggins. Bilbo, definition and meaning, is a long bar of iron with sliding shackles used to confine the feet of prisoners, especially on shipboard. Well, spank my ass and call me Tanya. There you go. I had no idea. Oh, what an education I'm having reading from these wonderful stories. So then they took us away in bilboes or iron bars with shackles for shackling them to ships. And next morning carried us all before Al-Mustansir Bi'ilah, commander of the faithful, who bade smite the necks of the 10 robbers. So the sworder came forward after they were seated on the lever of blood. Then, drawing his blade, struck off one head after another. Yes, I know. Until he had smitten the neck of the 10th, and I alone remained. The Caliph looked at me and asked the headsman, saying, "What ails thee that thou hast struck off only 9 heads?" And he answered, "Allah forbid that I should behead only 9, when thou biddest me behead 10. Quoth the Caliph, "Meseems thou hast smitten the necks of only 9, and this man before thee is the 10th. "Be thy beneficence," replied the headsman, "I have beheaded 10. "Count them," cried the Caliph, and when as they counted heads, lo, there were 10. The Caliph looked at me and said, "What made thee keep silence at a time like this? And how camest thou to company with these men of blood? Tell me the cause of all this, and for albeit thou art a very old man, assuredly thy wits are weak." Now when I heard these words from the Caliph, I sprang to my feet and replied, "Know, O Prince of the Faithful, that I am the silent Sheikh, and am thus called to distinguish me from my 6 brothers. I am a man of immense learning, whilst, as for the gravity of my understanding, the wiliness of my wits, and the spareness of my speech, there is no end of them, and my calling is that of a barber. I went out early yesterday morning, and saw these men making for a skiff, and, fancying they were bound for a marriage feast, I joined them and mixed with them. After a while, up came the watch and guardians of the peace, who put chains round their necks and round mine with the rest. But, in the excess of my courtesy, I held my peace, and spake not a word, nor was this other but generosity on my part. They brought us into thy presence, and thou gavest an order to smite the necks of the 10. Yet did I not make myself known to thee, and remain silent before the sworder, purely of my great generosity and courtesy, which led me to share with them in their death. But all my life long have I dealt thus nobly with mankind, and they requite me the foulest and evilest requital." When the Caliph heard my words, and knew that I was a man of exceeding generosity and of very few words, one in whom is no forwardness, as this youth would have it, whom I rescued from mortal risk, and who hath so scurvily repaid me, he laughed with excessive laughter till he fell upon his back. Then said he to me, "O silent man, do thy 6 brothers favour thee in wisdom and knowledge and spareness of speech?" I replied, "Never were they like me. Thou puttest reproach upon me, O commander of the faithful, and it becomes thee not to even my brothers with me, for, of the abundance of their speech and their deficiency of courtesy and gravity, each one of them have gotten some main or other. One is a monocular, meaning one-eyed, another palsied, a third stone blind, a fourth cropped of ears and nose, and a fifth shorn of both lips, while the sixth is a hunchback and a cripple. And conceive not, O commander of the faithful, that I am prodigal of speech, but I must perforce explain to thee that I am a man of greater worth and fewer words than any of them. From each one of my brothers hangs a tale of how he came by his bodily defect, and these I will relate to thee. So the Caliph gave ear to the Barber's tale of his first brother. Know then, O commander of the faithful, that my first brother, Al-Bakbuk, the prattler, is a hunchback who took to tailoring in Baghdad, and he used to sew in a shop hired from a man of much wealth, who dwelt over the shop, and there was also a flour mill in the basement. One day, as my brother the hunchback was sitting in his shop a-tailoring, he chanced to raise his head and saw a lady excuse me, like the rising full moon at a balconied window of his landlord's house, engaged in looking out at the passers-by. When my brother beheld her, his heart was taken with love of her, and he passed his whole day gazing at her, and neglected his tailoring till eventide. Next morning he opened his shop and sat him down to sew. But as often as he stitched a stitch, he looked to the window and saw her as before, and his passion and infatuation for her increased. You know nothing of those things, do you, Charlie? Passion, infatuation. She says, but I love my mama too. I know, Bubba's in heaven, darling. On the third day, as he was sitting in his usual place gazing on her, she caught sight of him, and perceiving that he had been captivated with love of her, laughed in his face, and he smiled back at her. Then she disappeared, and presently sent her slave girl to him with a bundle containing a piece of red coward silk. The handmaid accosted him and said, My lady salameth to thee, and desireth thee of thy skill and goodwill to fashion for her a shift of this piece, and to sew it handsomely with thy best sewing. He replied, hearkening and obedience, and shaped for her a chemise, and finished sewing it the same day. When the morning morrowed, the girl came back and said to him, My lady salameth to thee, and asks how thou hast passed yesternight, for she hath not tasted sleep by reason of her heart being taken up with thee. Then she laid before him a piece of yellow satin, and said, My lady biddeth thee cut her 2 pair of petticoat trousers out of this piece, and sew them this very day. Hearkening and obedience, replied he. Greet her for me with many greetings, and say to her, Thy slave is obedient to thine order, so command him as thou wilt. Then he applied himself to cutting out and working hard at sewing the trousers, and after an hour the lady appeared at the lattice and saluted him by signs, now casting down her eyes then smiling in his face, and he began to assure himself that he would soon make a conquest. She did not let him stir till he had finished the 2 pair of trousers, when she withdrew and sent the handmaid to whom he delivered them, and she took them and went her ways. When it was night, he threw himself on his carpet bed and lay tossing about from side to side till morning, when he rose and sat down in his place. Presently the damsel came to him and said, I didn't sleep much last night, can you tell? Dear goddess. My master calleth for thee. Hearing these words, he feared with exceeding fear, but the slave girl, seeing his affright, said to him, No evil is meant to thee, naught but good awaiteth thee. My lady would have thee make acquaintance with my lord. So my brother the tailor, rejoicing with great joy, went with her. And when he came into the presence of his landlord, the lady's husband, he kissed the ground before him, and the master of the house returned his greeting and gave him a great piece of linen, saying, Shape me shirts out of this stuff and sew them well. And my brother answered, To hear is to obey. Thereupon he fell to work at once, snipping, shaping and sewing, till he had finished 20 shirts by supper time, without stopping to taste food. Hello. The housemaster asked him, How much the wage for this? And he answered, 20 dirhams. So the gentleman cried out to the slave girl, Bring me 20 dirhams. And my brother spake not a word, but the lady sighing, Take nothing from him. Whereupon my brother said, By Allah, I will take naught from thy hand. And he carried off his tailor's gear and returned to his shop, although he was destitute, even to a red cent. Then he applied himself to do their work, eating in his zeal and diligence, but a bit of bread and drinking only a little water for 3 days. At the end of the time, the handmaid said to him, What hast thou done? Quoth he, They are finished, and carried the shirts to the lady's husband, who would have paid him his hire, but he said, I will take nothing, for fear of her, and returning to his shop, passed the night without sleep because of his hunger. Now the dame had informed her husband how the case stood, my brother knowing naught of this, and the two had agreed to make him tailor for nothing, the better to mock and laugh at him.